Thank you for joining me for another episode of Sam's Tech Stuff. Today I'll be reviewing the Noctua NH-U9S TR4-SP3 cooler on my budget first generation Threadripper build. I'll be taking a look at the build quality, benchmarking performance, and the sound. Also, check out today's video sponsor, Chillix. If you have a cat like most other tech enthusiasts, but you're still scooping, take a look at an automated self-cleaning litter box. I'll have links for information in the description below. The U9S TR edition has been released for a little while now, but with the first and the second generation Threadrippers showing up in the used market for hundreds of dollars less than retail, I thought it was a good time to take a look at this cooler again in a budget 1920X based Threadripper build. Before we get into the build quality, the cooling performance, as well as the sound and overall value, if you're interested in component reviews like this one, gaming PC builds, or home lab and server content, get subscribed to the channel and then hit that bell notification for updates when new videos land on the channel. I recently picked up a first generation Threadripper 1920X CPU and an AsRock X399N motherboard. I got this CPU and motherboard combo because I knew I would be able to use it in a couple of different projects. Search for a way to cool the CPU, of course, led me to Noctua. I looked at the offerings that they had, and I was actually quite interested in the U9S version of their cooler. This is a little bit of a shorter but beefier cooler that is compatible with the Threadripper sized CPUs, and it's under 150 millimeters tall. This TR version of the U9S has a base measuring 70 millimeters by 56 millimeters to cover the massive Threadripper IHS. The cooler, dimension-wise, actually comes in at about 125 millimeters tall, a width of 95 millimeters, and a depth of 120 millimeters. The fin stack on this heatsink is very dense. It also includes 2 fans. The cooler, fully assembled, is going to weigh around 895 grams. This is definitely enough to help cool a Threadripper CPU. As you can see, the cooler is going to come with a push-pull fan configuration. It includes 2 of the Noctua NF-A9 PWM fans. These are 92mm fans that can spin at an RPM starting at 400 all the way up to 2000 RPM. Noctua rates each fan at 46.4 CFM with a static pressure rating of about 2.28 millimeters to H2O. Noctua often includes an adapter to slow down the fan speed in order to reduce the noise to a certain sweet spot. They call this the low noise adapter. With the adapter plugged in, the fans will slow down to about 1500 RPM. This will produce about 38.4 CFM and a static pressure rating of about 1.3 millimeters to H2O. During my testing, while I did try the LNA adapter, I really didn't find it to be necessary for my own personal use, as I could barely even notice the fan noise coming from the heatsink over my graphics card. Noctua also includes a PWM Y splitter cable, which is certainly appreciated by those of us with only one CPU fan connector. As with nearly all of the Noctua coolers, you're going to get a tube of Noctua's own NTH1 thermal compound. For reference, this is actually what I use in basically all of my own systems and much of what I do on YouTube. I also repaste my graphics cards with NTH1. The NH-U9S TR4-SP3 is going to carry a 6-year warranty, which is pretty good in addition to the roughly 17-year estimated life from the fans that are equipped on it. I suspect you're probably going to want to get rid of the system before you find a failure in the cooler, which is always good to know. In terms of build quality, this is definitely a solid cooler. As I mentioned before, at 895 grams, there is no question about the heatsink's ability to remove heat from the CPU. As usual, every detail on these heatsinks is precision down to the uniform fins in the stack, perfectly aligned and user-friendly SecuFirm 2 mounting system, and of course, there are no razor-sharp edges to be found anywhere. My review sample came unblemished and was very easy to install. I found that over the years when buying Noctua coolers, that I don't always need all of the included accessories for the particular build the heatsink is for. That being said, I always have found a use for them on some other systems that I build. I really like that the LNA and Y splitter cables are normally included. Since this is an air cooler, we should take a look at the fan specs real quick. I found the NF-A9 fans to run very quiet at idle, and even when they're cranked up at full speed, I can barely hear them over the rest of my system. I'll move the mic towards the system real quick while it's running. Even though there's two fans here that push a lot of air through dense fins, there really isn't any kind of penalty you're going to pay in terms of sound. Now that we covered the important details on the fans for this cooler, let's take a look at the benchmarking results. For my test suite, I'll be running the stock fans at 100% fan speed to see what the cooler is capable of. As always, we'll be using Hardware Info 64 to measure the temperature sensors in the system. First, we're going to start off with the ASUS ROG RealBench benchmark. During stock testing, the 1920X hit 68C on average across all of the cores, with the automatic clock boost hitting about 3.6 to 3.62 GHz. Looking at the 3D Mark CPU test, we can see that the U9S kept the 1920X's 12 cores right around 58C on average during testing. The 1920X was able to auto boost right up to about 3.6 GHz across all of the cores. As this is a Threadripper CPU, we definitely have to test some video encoding. The U9S, for its small size, did quite well here in my custom handbrake testing by keeping the maximum temperatures right around 64C across all of the cores, allowing for the cores to hit a peak average auto clock of about 3.68 to 3.7 GHz. In the IDA64 testing, I saw the CPU hit about 69C with a peak auto clock of about 3.58 GHz, which falls in line with the other types of testing. Before we get into the Prime 95 benchmark, we're going to take a look at the folding at home results. I'm not exactly sure how the different work units stress the CPU in different ways, but I took a look at peak temperatures after about a day straight of running the folding client. The CPU had hit a peak of 67 degrees while allowing for the auto clock across the full day to be about 3.62 GHz. So I assume there were some harder work units and a couple of easier work units, because this is right around in the middle of a low and high-end stress work unit. Lastly, we'll look at the Prime 95 benchmark with AVX enabled. The cooler fared quite well here in my opinion. This is a pretty tough benchmark and it creates a lot of heat. The CPU was kept right around 68 to 70C with an auto clock of about 3.5 to 3.55 GHz. Considering the amount of power that the CPU was drawing, right about the max of 240 to 250 I think, this is a pretty decent temperature and clock speed. For what is essentially a miniaturized cooler, the NH-U9S TR4-SP3 did very well in the testing that I did. There were no issues with the heatsink, and it likely would have allowed for another 50 to 150 megahertz worth of overclocking on this system. For what my plans are for this system though, I don't know if I'm actually going to do any type of overclocks, so for now I just left it all at stock. In addition to keeping the 1920X running relatively nice and quiet and at decent clock speeds, this cooler is also just small enough to fit inside of a 4U server case. The U9 Threadripper edition is going to come in around $69.99 on Amazon, which is a good value if you're looking for a decent heatsink that's a little bit shorter. Anyone out there looking into building a smaller ATX PC or even a custom 4U server for a home lab, wink wink, this heatsink is definitely for you. Let me know what you think in the comments section about the used market pricing on the Threadrippers going way down from the original MSRPs. In the past, I would always look at an Intel 2011 V3 type server for something I was going to build at home, but now with the pricing going down so much on the Threadrippers and the motherboards that they go with, this is definitely a great option. Let me know what you think about the discount Threadrippers showing up on eBay and Craigslist, and if you're interested in picking one up. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button, and let me know what you thought about the cooler in the comments section below. I create component review videos like this one, gaming PC, and home lab server videos every week. If this kind of stuff interests you, get subscribed to the channel and then hit that bell icon for future video notifications. Until next time, you can follow me on Twitter at SamsTechStuff, on Facebook at facebook.com/SamsTechStuff, or on the website, SamsTechStuff.com.